The topic today is lexical change in times of upheaval and war, and the context for the change is going to be the Russian situation, events associated with eastern Ukraine, as well as the takeover of the Crimea. And what I mean by that is the words, the changes in the lexicon associated with these changes. As I've looked at this question over time and presented earlier versions of it and received a lot of good feedback from audience members, the realization is very strong that this is not a situation unique to what is happening right now in Russia, that apparently in times of social upheaval generally, there is greater change in the lexicon. So what I'm interested in is thinking about with you the type of contexts that are good for lexicography and give us more information, and types that do not, within or outside of a corpus. So the essential is not really the corpus or not, but what is a good lexicographic context, and also to raise the question of how connotation or whether connotation should be treated in dictionaries. My contention is that in the old print dictionaries, connotation was not treated in part because of how quickly it changes. If a dictionary project spans 20 years or more, it's very hard to capture connotation. And if we do capture it in the online environment, should we do so in definition, in illustrative examples? It tends now to be captured more in illustrative examples, but not always with any kind of label or indicator to the reader that what they're seeing is connotation. Here are some of the things I'm looking at in Russian. So you can see that it's not just new words. There are old words that are getting new and extended meanings, as well as other phenomena. Here are the events. Notice I put war in quotation marks because some people don't like to call this a war, so I'm trying to be very neutral and objective. There are other lexical phenomena not directly associated with these events that I won't go into today. Some of this has to do with Russian views toward Europe or the United States. That would be an item like gay Europa instead of Europe, so they call it gay Europe, or to call the Americans Pindosi, okay, which is a derogative term for Americans. But I do want to note that these new lexical items can be anti-liberal or anti-Western, or sometimes liberal and anti-Putin. They go both ways. I'm very interested in the influence of formal press and social media. And there is a lot of new word formation, so nouns turning into adjectives and so on. I'm more looking at meaning today rather than the different forms. I'm also looking at connotation, as I mentioned earlier. Here are some common definitions of connotation and denotation. I like Professor Ladislav Skusta's definition better, and I hope some people in the audience remember him. The Manual of Lexicography uses this to define connotation, and I like it because it basically says it's a lot of stuff apart from denotation. He makes it much broader. As I said, usually you see denotation in definition and connotation more in illustrative examples in print dictionaries. I'm going to talk about a few other situations of social upheaval that have shown similar disruption in the lexicon. So many people know Baudouin de Courtenay as a brilliant phonologist, but he was also quite an active lexicographer, and he got himself into trouble during his career for numerous reasons, but in terms of lexicography, he got himself into trouble for his revision of a revered work of Russian lexicography, Dow's dictionary. And when he revised this in addition to including swear words, he also included political words related to the revolution of 1905. And his dictionary was censored. It was pulled from libraries and bookshelves, so you can read about that in Farina and Durham 2012, if you're interested, which appeared in the Journal of the Dictionary Society of North America. So this is what Baudouin did to justify his inclusion of these words, the rationale he gave after the scathing critique in the press and the suppression of his dictionary. So he talks about the political events of recent years, meaning 1905. He talks about the significant change that takes place and how that has to be reflected in language. And here, I think he's talking about connotations. So the fact that one and the same word can have both positive and negative connotations, especially in a politically charged time. And he is, of course, advocating that these words should be included in the dictionary. Sergei Kartsevsky, a linguist and a writer in immigration from the Soviet Union, talks about the Russian Revolution of 2017 and that language that resulted from that. Another distinguished linguist, Afanasy Silishev, stayed in the Soviet Union and so is a little bit more diplomatic in the way he portrays the situation in the language. But nevertheless, he is saying that strong, harsh, and again, emotionally charged words appear. I love Weitgard's scum, and I like frenzied bourgeoisie also there. Bringing it to the present day, we have Lydia Starodubtseva, who was writing in Radio Svoboda, Radio Liberty, and here's how she characterizes the situation in both Russian and Ukrainian languages. I'm looking more at Russian here. She calls this a linguistic jerk or a wartime linguistic swerve, and when she says chaotic word formation, really what I think she's referring to are portmanteau words. So when one piece of one word is combined with another piece of another word for a new meaning. What I like very much about her metaphor and her description of this phenomenon is she talks about levels of language, everyday speech, social media, and what she calls more official linguistic space, which might be the more formal press as well as other sources. And she talks about the multi-directionality and the cross-fertilization between these levels as these new words are propagated and used more and more often. The first word I'm going to look at, and I'm not looking at a lot of words, I'm looking at tokens of what I think are types of things going on. So the first word was voted in a contest at St. Petersburg University as the word of the year. And initially this was a gleeful slogan for those who believe in Russia that the Crimea belongs to them. As is the case with many of these words, almost immediately a counter word appeared or a counter meaning will sometimes appear. So we have krimnashist, the second word there, which would be a negative word for those people who are supporting this Russian takeover, obviously by the people who don't support the Russian takeover. So here we have a context, and it is ambiguous as to the connotation, I think, here. So is the person being ironic and saying, well, now we can't even go abroad, everyone's angry at us, but we have the Crimea, is it ironic, or is it a serious use of the slogan? We don't know. Notice it is a Twitter hashtag. This context here is interesting because now the word has moved beyond being a slogan. It's declined. Here it's a genitive plural, so it's not just a slogan, but a countable noun even. And it appears that even positively connoted. Here, it seems to be negatively connoted. Now we have krimnashist, which, as I mentioned before, was a negative way of referring to people who support activities in the Crimea, or the takeover of the Crimea. However, here, it seems to be, yes, it does seem to be used in a negative way to refer to people with that belief. From the slogan Krimnash came a new slogan, Krimnash ilik nam krish, which I think is very clever. And so now that the Crimea is ours, are we finished, basically? And here is a great example. And notice here, this is being used as a slogan, but it's also being used as a noun with a preposition. So they're saying in Krimnash, in the Crimea. The end is near, so to speak. Is the person being ironic or serious? We don't really know. Nam krish can also now be used alone. Initially, it was just used with Krimnash. Now it can be used alone. And this example, the reader is being flagged. So notice that there are misspellings of Putin's name and the word help. So the speaker seems to be indicating that people who think like this are ignorant. And so therefore, they're using nam krish. It's over for us, but probably in an ironic way. That is my guess from this context. Obviously, it would not be a great lexicographic context for definition because it has some ambiguities. It might be something to show connotation in an illustrative example. I don't know. This word, Zhidabanderovets, is a very interesting word and an example of reappropriation. The word started out with an extremely, extremely derogatory connotation, very insulting, and has now been reappropriated as a word of pride for various people, as you will see. I want to point out that the part of the word Banderovets refers to Stepan Bandera, who was a Ukrainian nationalist figure in the time of World War II, and whose followers, he was not anti-Semitic, although he was accused of being anti-Semitic, but his followers were participants in some pogroms. So it's very ironic that this is being combined with the word Jew, this Banderovets. But basically, I think the point of it is that it's negatively connoted and that these are Ukrainian nationalists. Here's one example, and notice it also is a hashtag on Twitter as well as the word oligarchy, oligarchs. So there's that association of these Zhidabanderovцы, Yid Banderites with oligarchs. And this is a purely negative use of the word. Here's a usage that is not quite reappropriated, but more ironic, because what the reader is doing, or writer is doing, is ironically associating all the groups of people that are bad people together in an ironic way, and saying these people are the target for the Russian press. Here's a clearer example of reappropriation. This is Ukrainian, but the same word, of course, exists in Russian. And you see that the rather orthodox-looking Jewish people are carrying guns. I don't know my guns. Maybe they're Kalashnikovs. I don't know. So there they are, reappropriating the term here in a humorous way. You can buy things like this on the internet. And what's interesting here is the symbol on the cup and the badge looks like a menorah, but the three prongs right in the middle of the symbol are also a symbol for Ukraine. So they've combined the menorah with Ukraine in this symbol. And in fact, right before this conference, I went to Kiev and I bought my t-shirt, which I will reappropriate and probably wear to the gym when I return home. Here's another example, clearly with a positive connotation, and if there was any doubt, if you read the Twitter feed of this person, it is clearly being being used in a positive fashion here. Notice the date of April 23rd, and simultaneously, it is still being used in some places with a negative connotation. This is my favorite word in the presentation. Kolorat has existed in the Russian language for a long time, since the 1950s at least. And the Colorado potato beetle, according to the propaganda, was dropped from helicopters into Russia and Eastern Europe in order to decimate the potato crop. The CIA supposedly did this, and emblazoned on schoolboys' or schoolgirls' notebooks that they bought at the store in the 1950s would be a picture of the Colorado potato beetle. Now the term is being used for the Russian pro-Russian fighters in East Ukraine because of the similarity between the St. George, the ribbon that appears on the St. George cross, which is a patriotic symbol for Russia. The word is reappropriated sometimes, but rarely. So it is usually used with a negative connotation to mean those Russian fighters, but here we see a beautiful example of it being used to reappropriated to describe what's going to happen to the new Ukrainian president. And there's a play on words here where the verb plant in the ground also can mean to end up in prison. Here's a typical negative connotation, and this is some kind of evidence that the meaning may be extended and probably exists in other languages besides Russian and Ukrainian. So here is reported by the PBS in Lithuania. You can see the sticker in the form of the potato beetle that was put on products in supermarkets to encourage people to boycott the Russian products. So it can mean pro-Russian fighter, it can mean any Russian who supports activities in East Ukraine, and it seems to have that broadening of meaning to anything having to do with Russia. But I don't have print evidence for this right now. In Kiev, again, just before coming to the conference, I was able to purchase this lovely poster, meaning not 100% clear, at least for a lexicographer. The last example, if I have any time left at all, will be top-down linguistic innovation. So if you recall the 3 levels of Starodubtseva, the formal press or the official language, more standard language, was at one of the levels. And this change in this word, national predatel, seems to have come from the very top, from Vladimir Putin himself, the new usage. So here we see how the word was used previously to mean a collaborationist, someone collaborating with an occupying regime. And then in March 2014, Putin gave a speech just after the vote on the Crimea, and he used the term in a little bit different way. So since no one is occupying Russia, there is no occupying force in Russia to collaborate with, any citizen critical of certain policies can be called a national traitor. Notice that the old usage of the word and the new usage, really the main thing they have in common is the connotation, which is the negative connotation. So the connotation kind of is taking over in the meaning of this word. This word has been applied to ordinary people as, okay, so I'm not going to have time to finish. I'll just say that it's not a good word to have applied to you, I don't think. And it had negatively affected Andrei Makarevich, a rock musician from the 1980s, who insisted on continuing his speaking engagements in his concert engagements in the Ukraine. And that was detrimental to him in Russia, where his engagements were all canceled. Thank you very much.